Everyone.
How's it going?
Oh, well.
Last night, for reasons outside of my control, I had to step out of the computer, so I'm here to make up for the class. I couldn't be here last night.
Okay. No worries. I saw that you were kind of like off screen and couldn't go into the groups before, so I figured there was an issue, but no worries. You'll get a bit of the repeat out here and the lessons and stuff like that. So I hope everything.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
Okay, I'm gonna make you guys co-hosts again. Hope you all are having a good Thursday. And we'll start around 6:40 just to give a couple people more time to get in and um yeah, be the vibe. Tools. Tools. Hit share for the group work later on. And oh, screen. So around 6:40 we'll start in JavaScript and U. So what we're going to do in this class, very similar to what we've done in the past, is we'll go through a lecture, have a couple of labs. Y'all work together to work on those lessons, and I'll try my best to get y'all out by 8:30. Who knows, even earlier, one can hope. Oh, so yeah, no, on Saturday we'll have a lot more labs based in JavaScript land, just kind of get more used to JavaScript. But I also think there, I may be wrong about this, but we may have someone from the Air Force coming in on Saturday. So we'll have like a little um talk there and then go into the learnings. Here's the problem though. I think the person's gonna come around 1 p.m. So we're all gonna be kind of stuffed in that one room at 1 p.m. 2 p.m. hits. We can kind of like divide and conquer in the other room. But for now, that's gonna be kind of like our reality. But what's cool, if it's anything like the last cohort, we're just gonna learn about the internship at the Air Force. And y'all will see how cool that is. It's kind of like I always joke that it's if y'all have seen like the whole R&D projects from, well, y'all are probably too young for this, but apparently Bell Labs back in the day, the guys in like Bell Atlantic who are now Verizon and stuff like that. Back in the day before they were just sucking money from you guys and your cell phone plans. They used to be really great innovators. So um there's very few spaces where, like you're allowed to just kind of work on an innovation without really the need for it to be profitable. And the Air Force is going to be one of those. Of course, you know, you're innovating for other reasons with the Air Force, so we won't talk about that. But the idea is he will be able to kind of like innovate and stuff like that, which is cool. I think they'll talk about some of the old projects they did, some of the students from the past did. Um, Kazi, you went to the Air Force, right?
Yes, sir. I
Oh
did
yeah.
go to the Air Force.
Yeah, yeah. How's your experience there?
My experience was amazing. Luckily, Dr. Croker, the man that's coming to speak tomorrow, he was my mentor, and I wasn't involved too much in the battle aspect of things. I was more just helping him run implement a chatbot on a Google site that helps employees get hired and give them information on like the area and the benefit packages and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Dr. Kroger is cool peeps. He's um you don't realize he's just like this, dude at the Air Force. He just seems very like chill. So yeah, it'll be a good time.
Yeah, Dr.
And
Croker is extremely cool.
yeah,
And yeah, he'll be here on Saturday, so it's going to be nice for all the students to get introduced to him.
yeah. So again, that means, get there early, get there on time so y'all can actually like get the full lecture experience from the team there, Dr. Kroger and whoever else is gonna kind of be there to kind of assist on that. Um, how was Rome, New York, Kazi, compared to Queens out here? So that's the other thing. Y'all will be actually like staying in Rome, New York. So, it's kind of like the closest thing to going to a SUNY school or something like that for a summer.
So we actually stayed close to Rome in Utica University, which is about 20 minutes out. And the best way I could describe it, and I mean this respectfully, it's like Cowtown over there compared to Queens. There's not much going on. You'll have a few spots where you can go to eat or hang out. There's a lot of parks, which is pretty cool, but definitely a completely different vibe compared to Queens. It's a lot more isolated over there.
Yeah. So, what'd you do for fun outside of work there in Rome?
Oh well, we
Well,
tried to
not
find a
Rome,
couple spots to
24.
eat. So a lot of us would go out to eat together. We'd on the weekends we try to find like parks with water or beach fronts. So we'd go there. I checked out a museum. Yeah, I mean there's things to do there. But just the overall vibe is different. I personally enjoyed it because I'm so used to the noise. It was nice to just be with nature and have like an area where you don't hear anything during the night. But I'm sure the students that do get accepted to the program will have a phenomenal time and learn a lot also.
Uh, Thanks for sharing your experience, Kazi. Of course, you'll get more of that on Saturday. But yeah, I agree. Like I actually went to SUNY Oswego for college, so it was very upstate New York college town. Not much to do besides head to the bars out there and stuff like that. So it was good. And I think one of the interesting things you kind of mentioned was Cowtown. Like in another life, back when I was like 9 to 17, I used to live with the Amish every summer. So yeah, it's just farm town is cool. Who knows, maybe you'll actually get to chill with some of the farmers or something like that, bale some hay and stuff. But honestly, I'm hoping that the if y'all are carnivores out here, meat eaters, the um the beef would be tastier there, the food would be tastier there because it's just straight from the farm. But yeah, like who knows? But yeah, I guess are we at critical mass? I would say yeah, 24. We're good. So I'm going to kind of go over JavaScript, kind of like a little intro. We have a couple more lectures on JavaScript as well, but Now this is kind of like our introductory. We'll just kind of go into hopefully more lectures on Saturday, labs as well. But yeah, let me try to find this video I want to share with y'all to kind of talk about coercion JavaScript. And but yes, my computer knows I'm on a call. It's like, nah, give me a second. You'll get the information in 30 minutes. Oh, this is taking forever. All right. Load them. You load. All right. Hopefully that will load in the background. But for now, let's talk a little bit about JavaScript. So what is JavaScript? Um, JavaScript is a scripting language that's primarily used on the client side. And what I mean by that is like it means it really runs directly on your computer. A lot of times when you deal with other languages, they're running on a server, stuff like that. But here's the interesting thing, like we do have a situation when, and you'll learn about this with Node later on, but JavaScript can run on the server side, which is kind of like it running on a server, but primarily what you'll be building and what makes JavaScript so great is it works on your browser, the client side. So what's cool about this is if you actually take a look at let's see, we open up a tab here, go to our magical browser here, and kind of see that if I inspect the element here, y'all are all kind of familiar with the inspector tool here. But what's cool is there is a little console here, and this is JavaScript. You can kind of do little JavaScript stuff here on your console browser. So like if I say number equals 3. I'll be like, yo, what's number? I got you, fam. It's 3. Well, that's not it. Menu bar number. Now that's 3. So it's number plus 6, 9. You can do all this like cool JavaScript stuff on the web here. On our browser, just straight up. So our browsers run JavaScript, and that's kind of like that's what we mean by it running really on the client side. JavaScript kind of follows this ECMAScript standard. This is like this foundation called the ECMA Foundation that publishes these standards um, for our language here, JavaScript. But one of the things that I do want to point out is, if y'all are familiar with other programming languages, there is another programming language called Java. And something important to note is they are not related at all. Primarily, the reason why JavaScript is named JavaScript is in the 90s, it was this whole marketing ploy to kind of get people interested in the language of JavaScript. Java was like the cool kid on the block back then. So when you really think about Java and JavaScript, they are not related at all. JavaScript is kind of has the ECMAScript standards. Java is kind of like virtual machine stuff, yada yada yada. And an analogy I'd like to think to kind of like tell y'all is the JavaScript is related to Java like car is related to carpet. It's just the first couple of letters that are similar, basically. So keep that in mind. And we've talked a little bit about this, but just to bring it in your heads out here. But the idea is JavaScript. What is JavaScript used for? It's really used to allow you to interact with the web, your websites. It allows you to interact with the DOM, which is the document object model, enabling you to perform various actions on your page. What the heck is the DOM? The document object model. I'd like to think of this primarily kind of like your HTML, CSS and stuff, and your structure of your page is kind of like this architectural view of like your website. But what the DOM is kind of like taking that architectural structure and turning it into kind of like this 3D model so you can kind of like interact with it, switch the bricks out, move, open the door. It's think of a world where you kind of have a really beautiful new modern house. You got this you're about to walk into the door and you go and grab the doorknob and you realize like you've been Wile E. Coyote. It's just a 2D picture of a doorknob. Like what JavaScript does is kind of like creates that interactivity, that life, so you can actually open up the doorknob, enter in, experience the house that is your web page. So some of the actions that you can kind of do in with basically with interacting with the DOM is you can do things like show and hide elements on your web page. So picture, if we were doing the magazine project again, and we wanted to show and hide Kendrick Lamar's name or something like that from the piece there, you can kind of do that by like, interacting with the DOM via JavaScript. You can also animate elements to create visual effects. You can also replace elements with different elements dynamically. And you can also make requests to the server without really needing to reload the page. Here are a couple of examples of what this means. So, on my secret screen over here, I'm gonna try to grab some examples for you. So on here. All right. Last idea. So basically making a request to a server without really needing to reload the page. We're all gonna kind of like work on this assignment like later on in the class, but kind of built out a little Pokédex. And if you see every couple of seconds, the Pokemon will actually change, and the data on on what that pocket monster is will actually change on the right side. So this is an example of uh like text manipulation that actually changes without you actually having to um press anything, press refresh, or anything like that. Basically changing text, grabbing data from a server, a third party, or an API, to bring that data and show it to you on a page. And also, I never finished this piece there where you actually could type in the Pokemon number, but here's an example of actually if you interact with something, it can actually, the JavaScript can actually change elements on the DOM. Let's see. Might need 1 minute for this. It's honestly my fault for not finishing the app and deploying it. Come on. All right, there it is. Yes. All right, so for a little bit, I've been trying to work on a little the greatest hits of 2010 memes. Y'all don't know the golden age of the internet back in the day, back when memes were pure, and you know, you didn't have to worry about the web monetizing every piece of thing you're doing. But let's say here's an example of how basically interacting with something here, interacting with a element like an image here can actually change uh the element based off of JavaScript. So this is a whack-a-mole game, so I was testing out kind of like what are their idle states compared to their hurt states. So a click will actually change the image, like hiding the idle animation and then basically showing the injured animation. And that actually turned into, is my server still? Let's see. Still trying to clean this up, but turned into this guy over here. Bam. Take him out. Take him out. Take him out. Okay, so before we spend the whole class trying to beat my score. But yeah, this is kind of an example of the interacting with the DOM, this representation of your web page, changing elements via JavaScript to actually create an effect that feels more interactive. Like, so the DOM represents all HTML elements on your website in a programmatic way, so you can programmatically change it. We've kind of like this little drawing to the right here. Like to try and ring this through. Like when we think of HTML, you think of it as the skeleton structure or the outline of like your character. If you're drawing out a cartoon character, HTML plus CSS will give you that kind of like color that you'd want on this character. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript will give you that like breathability into the character. So it turns into a like a real alligator. The mouth can actually move, the legs can walk around, so on and so forth. Okay, so JavaScript data types. Let's get into what are these tools you can use to actually work with the language to actually make your own whack-a-mole game or your Pokedex or whatever, or something serious, like I will like to say I am the Loki of the web, so I'm always going to make some stupid stuff, but maybe you can do something to change the world. So JavaScript primitives. I'd like to think of these primitives, JavaScript primitives, as like the Stone Age kind of tools and rocks and tools that the cavemen and women used back in the day to kind of like make their lives semi like livable. The little hammer that they actually put a rock on a stick to actually hammer in an object, or like the two rocks to spark fire so they can cook. These are the little primitive tools that we use to kind of create the programs that we want in JavaScript. So a lot of these structures we're kind of familiar with, but this is represented in like the JavaScript primitive way. So what we have in here in these primitives are strings, which represents a sequence of characters. Idea of that is kind of like here, you see this is a string. Numbers, which represent numerical values. So this can be, whole numbers like 12 all the way to, numbers that don't really quantify like a full number, like infinity, all the way to doubles or float values, which are like 3.4, pi out here. So Booleans represent true or false, either true or not true. And a lot of that Boolean logic can kind of like branch out into complex structures that turn into complex programs. So again, a lot of these complex things start out with these small little caveman tools. Null represents an absence of value, and undefined, which represents like basically a variable that has been declared but not it has not been assigned. Um, Symbols, not to really confuse y'all, but it's basically like represents a unique and immutable value to create like object properties for now. Like you won't really be interacting with symbols in your first couple of weeks with JS, but like just know that's out there. All right. JavaScript objects. So objects are like these complex data types that include things like like a collection of key and value pairs. We'll go over an example of that a little later. All the way to arrays, which handles a ordered list of values like an array of numbers for as you can see in the example there, where it's like 1, 2, 3, and functions, which are reusable blocks of code. I like to think of functions as kind of like the architect of your programs. A lot of times, a program will do the same thing over and over again. And one of my mentors always told me the secret power of a programmer is laziness. So, basically, you don't want to be redoing the same thing over and over again. So, how do you fix that? You kind of put all of the logic that you're going to reuse, a reusable block of code, into this thing called the function, and then you just call that function over and over again when you need to do it. Best way of kind of explaining this was kind of like, y'all all live, well, most of y'all, live in the city. A lot of y'all are in Queens. You've probably seen how once a neighborhood starts to get gentrified, it's basically a building comes up, but it's literally the same damn building that you see. It's like the same architecture. It's almost like a copy paste structure, building with silver linings, maybe some black strips there, make it look trendy, make it look like a burger joint or something like that. I like to say like a function is basically like them taking that same architectural like plan and being like, yeah, we need this on this block, we need this on the other block over there, we need this in Brooklyn over there, taking the same instructions of how to build this same trendy looking building and just repasting it and recreating it there. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the difference between null and undefined. These are two kind of like falsy values, two kind of like nothingness values, but they handle different kind of contexts. So what undefined is basically it indicates that a variable, and we'll go into what a variable is, has been declared, but no assignment has been given to that value. A good example of this is if we take a look at our little JavaScript editor, aka the console in our browser here. Let's say type in clear here so you get a clearer view. Get out of here. Oh yeah, I forgot. Wait, there's a way to clear this. It's the button. I didn't need to type anything in there. All right, so let's say I want to create a variable called let teacher. As you can see, I did this from the last class. Let teacher, that out of here. I've declared a variable called teacher. It's undefined because it's been declared, but it's like there's nothing in it. So if I say, yo, what is teacher? What is teacher? Tab. It'll be like nothing. It's undefined. So it's a value, but there's nothing like there's a declaration of a variable, but there's nothing in there. So if I say something like teacher equals s, we now have this value of s. If I say, yo, what is the teacher out here? I'll be like, oh, it's Hess. Cool. So, when you think about like undefined, a couple of things to think about, functions, do not explicitly return anything. So the value would be implicitly returning undefined as the logic in your function runs. So when you think about like when you're building out your programs, you create a function and it runs and you just see like on an output undefined, you're like, yo, it didn't do anything. Probably did something. It's just like, you didn't kind of like return anything to say like, oh, this has been done, like a log or anything like that to say like this part has been done in the program in your function there. So that's really what undefined is. Null is kind of like JavaScript's assignment of like the complete representation of it's a deliberate kind of absence of any value. So the idea is like, let's say in go back to our JavaScript console here. If I let's say if I won the lotto, and no, I would still teach if I won the lotto, but like let's say if I'm gonna create a variable called like job. If I made a hit game, that would be null because I won't be working. So if you kind of look at this here, I'll still teach you guys, but like my full-time job would be nothing. Be just sitting home making the greatest game this side of the Mississippi. But the idea is like, as you can see, this is a deliberate indication of like no value. So one is kind of like this declaration, implicit return of like not really of nothing, while null is kind of like this intentional representation of null of no value. So you can kind of use that in your logic. So the idea is like, let's say if you have a value of null, you can kind of run logic on your program to actually figure out what to do next. So like a good example is if I have null in a particular input field, I would probably have something in my program to actually say, hey, you have not written out this particular required field on the input box. So, you can't submit your form yet. Cool. All right. Type of operators. So, in JavaScript land, we'll kind of go over coercion and why like why we need to really understand types. But this type of operator is a way to kind of like share like uh what what is the data type of your given value. A lot of times because JavaScript is a weakly typed language, which basically means you can kind of put anything anywhere in like data types. You sometimes need to understand what one thing is over another. So the output is, like this type of operator kind of shows you like, hey, what is this, what is the data type of this thing that I've just asked you about. So if you take a look at the first one here, there is like, hey, we're asking, hey, log console.log. That basically means on the console, tell us, write out what's in these brackets here, um, parentheses here. And what we're saying is like type of two. So basically, hey, we're saying like, hey, the output of that is number. Well, if we do console log type of, the string John, we'll say like, yeah, the output is a string, because this is a number, this is a string. We're asking the type of. You can do some logic to kind of like figure out if you're dealing with the same type. And why is this important? Because of type coercion. So basically, um, best way of explaining this is, as I mentioned, there's a process of implicitly or explicitly converting values from one type to another in JavaScript because we mentioned like JavaScript is this weakly typed language, so sometimes your values can change based off of things that you don't even really realize is happening in your programming in your program. So these are kind of like these JavaScript quirks, and you should understand these to kind of like understand the language. One interesting thing to think about is you've probably seen on the web, if you have been looking on the web and stuff, about how there's this new kind of variation, based off of JavaScript called TypeScript. This is kind of like a strongly typed language to kind of fix these issues, because what can happen in your JavaScript program is you can, you can be writing something and assume that, and it can fail, it can break, like basically without you really knowing, because it's not going to give you an error on it breaking, because your values are explicitly being changed within the program by basically the language being the language that it is. So here's an interesting thing. One fun fact about this is actually some of these values, some of these outputs are actually different now, because like this was done back in a different variation of JavaScript. And now, as we've talked about, JavaScript is so weird and unique sometimes that, your JavaScript could be like your version of JavaScript could be different based off of browser, based off of like the interpreter you're using. So, we'll see that some of these answers are actually different now, but pop quiz. I want to kind of ask y'all a couple of questions. Like, so for 2 plus 2, two numbers being added together in the world of JavaScript, what do you think the value would be for this? Feel free to pop off mute and just yell the answer.
Or
4? You're wrong. That's 5. No, I'm kidding. But yes, that's basically that sounds like a good I think that would be the case too. So yeah, 4. What about 2 plus the string 2?
I think it's going to be 22.
22? Yeah. Okay, maybe. Like what's interesting is that could be the case. But will it be 22 the number? Will it be 22 the string? Who knows? Same for the other side there. Like if you have the string in front, bam. What would that be? Also doing the minus there of like, 2 plus, 2 minus 2, the string 2 minus 2. Here are the answers as of like 4 years ago. Because like if you actually put these into the browser now, I believe either the third or the second and third one might be slightly different now. So let's go over this. So but here's the thing. What I want to really get at is these are not like the outputs you expect when you're dealing with data in JavaScript. So these are some of these weird quirks that can happen. So in the first answer, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Yeah, because we're not doing any type conversion. It's just a simple math equation with numbers. So 2 plus 2 is 4. All right, so here's the interesting thing too. You put the number first number there. Again, let's actually test this out. Let's see if this changed now. But we do 2 plus the string 2. If you take a look, yeah, it's actually 22, but it's the string 22. So the idea is it's kind of being like, yo, I see a string here, so I'm going to convert that number to a character and then add them together. So here's the interesting thing. You see how like it was 4 before. So back in the day, it would actually say like it would have, JavaScript took the first number and was like, all right, that's what we're converting it to. So we're converting the next thing to a number and doing the same math equation on it. And now it's different. So let's see what happens with our next one, which is 2 plus number 2. It's the same answer. It's actually converting your number to a string and adding them together. And if we do something like the string 2 minus 2. Also, I'm going to make this a little bigger for you guys so you can see it. 2 minus the number 2. It's like 0. So it's just like, yo, what? Like, I thought it was a string before. Why is it now going back to a number? What? There was a video that I wanted to share with y'all called JavaScript What? I just can't find it anymore. Oh, wait, hold on. Is this it? see.
Hey, folks.
Let's see. All right, it's not it. All right.
JavaScript.
There was a very funny video. I kind of like went over this. It's like, unless you watch, what is it? There's like two funny like programmers that actually make funny jokes. So, like when I find one, I try to like share it with fellow developers and stuff. But yeah, long story short, went over this whole bit of like what the hell's happening with JavaScript. Like if I do this and this is this and this is that. Like what the hell? All right, but long story short, what you really have to kind of keep in mind is like your values can change based off of these implicit things. So you have to keep that in mind. So what's interesting is, for for something interesting, like an interesting look in how these things can lead to weird, unexpected like coercions, like result checks with this link over here. I'm actually gonna share it with you guys on Slack. Just kind of kept that in the chamber for you guys. So in cohort 2, you'll see this little chart that I want to share with y'all which basically it's kind of like this nice little easy ish to use chart on if you kind of like compare these two values, what they would equate to. So, true and true would be true. But, then it just starts to get weird as you kind of like ask, like, hey, is an array like infinity? Is an array an array? Should be, but it's not apparently. But take a look at this chart and you can kind of see where these weird quirks can kind of come in JavaScript. This is part of the reason why people use TypeScript now, and you'll probably see a bit of TypeScript in your programming future, but like you should understand why. I always joke every 2 years in the web, you get this one senior developer who wants to kind of revolutionize everything, thinking everything that is done is wrong. So, we're now in the phase of using TypeScript to kind of solve the weird JS quirks that we've been living with for like damn near decades. All right, falsy values. There are 6 falsy values. Basically, the idea is like they're false like. So 0 is 1, is that, 0 is considered false or like a negative value. An empty string with no white space is 1 as well. But think of this in the sense of like, hey, you want to do some logic where an empty string with no white space, if that's given, then like basically you could kind of treat that as a false value to be like, yo, fill out your name. You didn't fill that out in the form that that you were supposed to. Of course, null and undefined are falsy values. Nan, which is not a number. This is kind of like that weird null for numbers. And of course, false. So how do we handle like, like how do we like kind of house our types and just kind of make sure things aren't like really messing up here? Variables. So this is kind of like the best way of explaining this is like think of variables as these little containers where you could store values and then you can use those values in other places in your program. So let's go over a couple of variable declarations. So there are some new ways of doing this as of ES6, where we are not at ES6 anymore. I think we're like at ES7 or 8 or something like that at this point. But yeah, like there are some changes, and you'll see kind of like the old way in certain programs, but I want to kind of just explain why we use these different ways of declaring variables now. So first and foremost, we have our old school method, which is just declaring var. Basically, we don't really, as Black Panther says, we don't do that here. We don't really use this anymore. We use the next ones coming, which are let and const. The reason for this is like var is kind of like if you have a variable like var in the global scope, it's kind of like having a megaphone that blasts out like, yo, this variable is this, but also it can actually be re-evaluated by saying var. And like if you had another number, I mean, sorry, if you had another variable with the same name, it could actually you could actually like change that declaration globally, and there's just a lot of weird stuff that can kind of come in there. So unless it's like contained in a local scope like a function or something like that, most of the time your variables are global. And you may not really want that in your in like when planning out your logic there. So um really just think about like, you'll see vars around in the world, but understand that they are not really, they're kind of like the remnants of an old age. Let is kind of like the new way of kind of declaring a variable. It kind of handles the scope a little better. And basically, um, like this variable declaration is really used for when you're actually trying to declare a variable that you may want to change. So, for example, let's say I would kind of declare, let's go to our little fake editor over here. Let's clear this. If I want to kind of come up with a variable that will change, so like something like health in a video game, would probably let that be a let, because we do something like health minus 10. I got hit by a blue shell in Mario Kart or something like that. I can edit my variable and then basically be like, yo, what is health now? It is currently, oh yeah, I did not. This is funny. So I actually did a equation on this on my variable, but I didn't save it. So what we'd actually do is actually, let's go back to this there. And then I would say like health equals health minus 10. So yeah, I got hit by a sick burn in middle school. So my health went down 10 points. And if we check to see what health is now, it's 90 because my feelings are hurt. And you can kind of edit your let variables because you're able to with that declaration. So that's let. But let's go to something different. Const. Const is more of, think of this as if you're having trouble kind of like remembering this, like const is a constant. You can't change it. This is some of like this is an example of like, you have something more permanent that you always want to reference. So while let, you could think of let as like, let's play around with that. We don't need to really, we're not going to really need to worry about like it, like we're cool with changing it and stuff like that. So your let variables can be changed and edited in your program. So here's an example of what we'd want to do with a const. So if we had something like pi, which if you take a look, nope, that's not it. Pi equals 3.14. You see, we've declared this variable called pi, and if we ask, what is pi right now, it'll be like, yo, it is 3.14. But if I were to say, yo, pi, pi is now 3.15, gonna be like, nah, you can't reassign a constant variable. You can't do that, but with let here, if we have our health here, let's say I got another sick burn out here. Just run this function there where I got hurt again. We go back to health. Bam, we're at 80 now. So we can reassign our lets. We can't reassign our consts. You can kind of handle this in different ways. An example of like you'd probably wonder, like, why would I never want to change a variable? Let's say for doing something like math, where we want to kind of always have the formula of pi and always continually use it for equations. We probably just have a const variable of pi to kind of like handle the circumference of a circle and stuff like that. But something more tangible on the web is I had a set of whitelisted domains, like domains that are allowed in this website here to allow for this CAPTCHA feature to actually work. So the idea is, all right, let's close that. The idea is like, hey, we don't necessarily want a hacker to kind of come in and just spam emails in this form. So we have to kind of protect which URLs, like which domains we can use for this. So within a another function on AWS, I basically was like, yo, only this website here, like the Watt zipper here can be allowed to send these forms, and also like local host if I'm testing it, a certain local host or something like that. So those are considered that was assigned as a constant array of like allowed domains, and that is something that won't be changing in our program. So that's allowed to be a constant. We're not gonna really be out here adding new domains to this one domain that we are using particularly for that one functionality. So that's kind of an example why we'd use something like const there. All right, so we kind of went over this a little bit, but variable declaration. So, we have the idea of a declaration and a definition. So when we first kind of declare a variable, kind of like what we did here, let's clear this up. We could say this is an example of a declaration. So I'm gonna say like was it food or dinner? I don't know what I'm eating yet, so I have declared my variable of food for dinner. This is an example of a declaration. It refers to the act of like using one or more like variable declarers, like, yo, this variable exists. I don't quite know what the variable is going to be yet, but I just want you to know that it exists. So an example is food for dinner. I don't know what I'm eating, but I know I'm going to be eating something. Let's say after this class, I make a definition and I'm like, yo, food for dinner is going to be madones. No, it probably will be like Jamaican. So, all right. Terrible spelling, Jamaican food. I'm a programmer, not a speller. But if we now look at food for dinner, it's now Jamaican food. So I will have some curry chicken with rice and peas after this class. We have defined the value of that variable that we've declared. So it's now Jamaican food. All right, functions. So we kind of talked about functions a little bit. This idea of like, what the heck is a function? What do we want to do in the world of functions and stuff like that? How they're kind of like these blueprints for little code blocks that we want to reuse. Let's see how we kind of declare them in the world of JavaScript. So, I wish there were better, there's a better visual of this, but there's a couple of ways we can declare function. So we have basically the straightforward way to declare a function in JavaScript is just kind of having the name of our function. So for example, this function is called myfunc. It can take an argument, so what's cool about a function is in there, you can take an argument to kind of say if you want to change something like in your function, or you need to use that that parameter in your function, you can always pass in a data type into your function. And then you have these two brackets that kind of are like within these brackets, I'm going to do some code to kind of like do some stuff in there. So basically, uh, you can also kind of like declare an anonymous function. So you can, so you don't need to specify its name and expression as a callback function. These are kind of like, hey, let's say if I have a function, on a set of code, and I want to, like, as I mentioned, there we can pass things in there. You can pass a lot of things, like almost like you can pass, like you can even pass a function inside of a function. That's kind of like callback. The idea is sometimes you don't even need to name it, because you're just kind of like passing that logic into another piece of code there. But the idea is basically um the this way of declaring a function is will get hoisted to the top of your script. So what that means is, think of like this as a flagpole. So like you basically declared your function on line 12, it's hoisted all the way to the top. So if you basically declared you declared your function on line 12, but you used it on line 10, it doesn't matter, because the way, if you declare a function this way, it's hoisted very much like a flag to the top of your program, so you can actually kind of use all of them whenever you need to. There's also another way of declaring a function, and that's really just declaring it as a variable. So, we kind of talked about variables in the past, like food for dinner could also be go get your lazy ass outside and get some Jamaican food, and that's the function name. I mean, like, and just kind of, I have to go down and walk. So, like, the logic is take 3 steps, go down the block, so on and so forth. Yeah, so JavaScript functions are considered first-class functions, which mean they can be assigned to variables and passed around. So basically that whole assigning it to a variable and passing it around, you can kind of do there, like go outside and get your food. That's the function name, because we assigned it to a variable. We can kind of like use that wherever we want. And yeah, honestly, we'll like honestly like uh you'll see like another way we can kind of like declare a function. This is like the newer way, but like, long story short, you'll see kind of like a function being declared in multiple different ways. This is kind of just JavaScript. You sometimes in other languages, there's like you can only do it one way, and that is it. JavaScript kind of, again, because we are a weakly typed language, you kind of have like the ability to have control of like how you're declaring it, and you declare it different ways for different reasons. So the latest way we can kind of declare a function is using this concept called the fat arrow function. So basically, we have our little parentheses here. We have this whole, like, this is considered the fat arrow. It's an equal and then a greater than. And then the bracket where we actually have our code is like right here. And the biggest thing to really think about is this. This kind of helps bind what this is with a little better. So a lot of times you can lose concept of what this is, in your program, what this is, so like back in the day before we had something like the fat arrow function, like sometimes developers would try to save the concept of what this is in a variable called that. Oh, what is this? It's that. It's like, what is this, an Abbott Costello bit? The fat arrow function kind of like fixes this. It kind of helps bind your concept of where you are, what this is, a little better. And you'll kind of understand why we use that like a little better when we start like doing some of the labs. So what else do we got here? Arrays and objects. Basically, these are two different, as we mentioned, these are two different kind of like data structures that we can use to help kind of store data for our program. Let's start with arrays. arrays store a collection of data that can be contained in multiple values. As we kind of talked about, JavaScript's a weakly typed language, so an array in JavaScript can kind of hold the whole peanut gallery of data structures. So as you can see in this array here, we have strings, then numbers, then an array of numbers, then also an object. And that's a valid array. Why you would use it that way, I honestly have no idea what this program would do with that, but it's available to you with JavaScript. You can also declare it with like the same values, and you can also declare it as a variable. So we are declaring this variable called array, and it's equal to array of numbers going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And remember, the way we index through an array, like when you actually kind of try to actually, hold on, let me just quickly steal this and show it to you. The way we kind of navigate through an array is, it's all zero indexed. So if we were to kind of like put this down here in our console, well, actually, let's clear this up. It's down in our console. We have an array here. Our array, the way we kind of reference it is we actually like need to like use the bracket to actually go in and see which, like, hey, I want this element here. A lot of times people would get messed up by being like, hey, I want the first element. You put that in there and it's like, hey, it's 2. No, that's not the case, because arrays in JavaScript and most languages start at 0. So you're actually, to get the first element of your array, you need to start at the 0 index. So 0 indexed throughout there. So keep that in mind. Yeah. And this is kind of us talking about that. So, hey, remember, once you declare an array and retrieve an element, remember the indices of it being 0 index. You have a car, you have this concept of cars, Porsche and Camry. Let's say you're like, yo, I really want that Porsche. Let me get the first one in there. And then they give you a Camry and you're like, son of a, I should have remembered 0 indexing. But long story short is remember how you navigate through your arrays. Objects are a little different. They're basically this more organized data structure with keys and value pairs to kind of like go through your program. So here's a good example. The idea of like there is a const object called car. It's a constant because we're not going to be like changing really anything. It's a car. We're not going to change the make or model of the car. So the idea is you you would create this car. You have the key, which is like your make, and then the value of that key is Toyota. So the make of this car is Toyota, and you have another key in here, which is called model, and basically the value of model is matrix. So if we were to kind of like copy this real quick, so I'll show you an example of something this quickly. If we kind of have, get out of here, clear. And y'all can see this, okay? I'm not over here. It's not too small for y'all. That's a little better. All right, so if we take a look at this car value here, we have car, and let's say I want to make a string that kind of like gives me the make and model of this car. I'll do something like my car is the make, just kind of like plus that, add to it. So say car bracket make. You see my cars, well, I should make that sentence a little better. My cars make is a Toyota. And we're going to kind of add to this navigating through our little object there. plus there. And the model is a, just kind of key into that again, and I'm gonna show you a different way of us interacting with this. So key, we can actually key index into it. So yeah, you just kind of do a dot notation on there. So it's like, yo, this gives us oh wait, add a space. Dang. Wait a sec. Can't have the sentence looking ugly out here. All right, so here the idea is, from this little string we have here, I'm referencing this object of car, and I'm basically saying, hey, my car's make is, hey, what is the key? Like I use the key of make to kind of get the value of what that is in my object. That, I think of keying into a treasure chest or something like that. You open it up and it's like, oh, the make value is Toyota. And I added another like bit of the sentence there, and the model is, and as you can see, I kind of referenced it a different way, saying car dot model, where it's basically, I'm like, hey, what is the model? Basically doing the same key thing where I'm like keying into my object with the key of model. What's the value of that? Open up my chest. Model is matrix. And we have this string of my car is a Toyota and the model is a matrix. Okay. So you could use brackets to kind of get the key you want in your target, but also you can do the dot notation as you saw from the line from like the example that I did there, where you could kind of just say like the name of your object dot what the key name is, go in there, get the value. All right. So this is new in the world of JavaScript. Well, it's new 10 years ago. So, it's old news to y'all now. But the idea is there's this new syntax to kind of getting a set of data from your like arrays and objects, and it's called destructuring. The idea is basically, hey, you see how like it took a little bit of time for me to kind of get that one key and then that one pair from an object, and it would be the same for like an array. You can kind of destructure this array to kind of get the values there. So for example, if you have this concept of like another array where it's just like 1, 2, 3, and you wanted to get like the first 3 values of it and kind of assign them to A, B, and C, you can kind of like declare it this way of saying like, hey, const, I want to kind of get the first 3 values from my array here. And if we log that out, it'll say like A, B, and C are the first, second, and third elements of that array. We are destructuring the array to kind of grab these values. Beforehand, you'd have to kind of like declare a variable A, then a variable B, then a variable C, and kind of say like array arg0, arg bracket 0 for A, arg bracket 0 for B, arg bracket 1, 2 for C. Now you don't really necessarily have to do that. So this is kind of an example of like destructuring and continuing this to an object. Basically, you can destructure a object. I know it looks a little complex, but it just takes a little bit of practice playing around with the actual like the syntax of destructuring. But let's say if we had this object of first name and favorite color, we can kind of destructure that to actually have like first name, favorite color, destructuring syntax, basically saying that's going to be equal to what's in the object. And if we actually console log these new variables called first name and favorite color, they would equate to John and blue, which are the key pairs pointing to the values on inside of our object there. So destructuring. Destructuring is weird, but you just need practice with it to get better with it. So it's around 7:40. let's get to lab lands now. So I'm gonna break us into groups again, and we are gonna go through a couple of labs. But first things first, I actually do want to make sure y'all are kind of good with installing certain parts to actually get your tests running inside of the labs. So let me just quickly grab this. Okay, great, great.
Are we doing jest for test?
We're doing what?
Are we doing jest?
Yeah, so basically here's the deal. We have like I want to make sure like everyone kind of has the instructions to install Node and all that stuff on their machine first, and then basically do the labs. So had the instructions for you guys. I just want to grab them again. But the cool thing about it is you do your
Windows?
lab, and then basically you are able to kind of just run a command to run tests, and then basically that will you'll see if like you've passed your test or not. Um, all right, so I'm gonna put this in our Slack, but I just wanna. So first things first, everyone's gonna kind of like work on installing yeah, Node and stuff like that. So if you have a Mac, it's a little easier. Basically, if you have Homebrew, you can install it via the Homebrew command line, or you have to install it via like Node.js.
Sudo,
Basically, say again, please.
sudo,
Yeah,
sudo ADP.
exactly. So um, I'm running first. This is how you'd run. This is how you'd install it on a Mac. Let me see with this. And it doesn't give you the syntax. All right. That's annoying. But if you have a Mac, basically, what you do is go to Homebrew. Make sure you install Homebrew on here, but basically look up what the heck Homebrew is first. And Homebrew is kind of like this package manager for your Mac OS. If you don't have it, you should have had it because like you're, like if you're developing on a Mac. And then from here you can actually install you could actually install Homebrew, but I want to also share how you do this on Windows. On Windows, you'd actually just go to Node. Yes. Download Node.js. Yep. And then yeah, you can kind of download it via the Node.js site, click on Windows, and then you can kind of like choose your like choose the way you're installing it. So perfect. Thank you, Shahid. But yeah, bam. Oh, perfect. I'm actually gonna delete mine's so that it looks way better. So all right, bam. One thing I do want to point out is if this looks if there's a lick of like this looks complex to you, like trust me, like I want y'all to kind of get into the habit of actually I'm not sharing my screen, apologies. I want to y'all to get into the habit of actually like Googling these things so you can kind of understand how to do these things without like because we're around for the cohort, but like let's say when you get your first jobs and stuff like that, we won't be around forever. But like basically this is Node. You can kind of like install it via whichever route you are, whichever OS you're using. Use Homebrew if if you are on a Mac. If you are on Windows, install it the traditional way of like doing it on Node.js. But let's say if I was over here being like, I have no idea what Hess said. This dude is rambling. He talks too much. This is how I would actually just like consult the great Googles to actually do this. So would actually say something like, how do I install Node.js on my Windows? See, I'll go and click on that. And first and first, we have like we actually have like the download guide here, but what's cool is because again, don't trust the AI overview completely. But it actually has like a video tutorial and stuff like that on how to do this. But you visit the page, choose the long-term supported version, and then you'd actually run the installer. And from that wizard, you'd kind of install it, add it to your path. You're using something like git bash, you want to make sure it's in your path so you can actually run the node commands on your git bash and stuff like that. If you're using MVM in Windows, you would handle it this way and make sure you verify that it's working by actually running this command node-v and actually check npm-v. So install node, that's the first thing. The second thing is to actually do the labs. So these are the labs that we will be doing today, and I'll just kind of go through a couple of them really quickly. What to do, not to actually answer it. I'll do that later, probably on Saturday. I'll do one or two of them, but I want here are our labs. Let me actually, I'm gonna click on one so you can see how this should look. Okay, great. So start with the first one here. All right, this is our lab. This is called JS in between, and the idea is you're going to have a function, and you're going to have to check to see if the number. There are three values that are being tossed into this function. You need to check to see if the num value is in between the minimum and maximum there. Sorry. But the reason why we are using Node is you have to use npm to install all of the dependency packages, and then you run npm test to actually make sure that your logic is working. The space where you actually put in your, you write your code is in the lib folder. And I kind of wrote a small little function already, and you just kind of write your code in here. You have tests to actually test this against. That's in your spec folder. So when you run npm tests, basically what's happening is the program's going to go straight to this test file and actually test it out by checking these two tests to make sure they let what you're doing is actually working. Once it works, bam, you're great. So what you're going to do is fork the repo, very much like we've done before. Write your code, pair program, have a driver and navigator. I'd recommend someone sharing their screen, talking through it, finishing it, and then basically the person that didn't write their code switch up, do the same thing in different roles, and then both of y'all are going to make a pull request. The next lab is vowels. So the idea is basically you'll have a within the same function structure. So basically you go to lib, your function is here, is val, write your code in here. But the idea is you're going to be presented with this is an example of a argument being passed into a function here, very similar to the other one where basically a letter will be passed in and it has to return true if it's a vowel. What is a vowel? A vowel, everyone? A-E-I-O-U. And you just have to check to see if what was kind of passed into your function is one of those vowels. And if it is, you return true. And if it's not, you return false. You you do the npm install. And then you can also run npm run answer for that one to work. And you just run test here, dash dash, going into the spec folder. And the next one is speaking grandma. If y'all finish the 2 over there, I'll be very impressed. We're probably gonna go over this one in class on Saturday. So this is kind of like homework-ish but like long story short, read through the instructions to see what you have to do for this lab. But like long story short, focus on is between and is val for now. And if you have time, work on speaking grandma. It's kind of like homework for Saturday, for us to kind of review on Saturday. Okay. Those are now in the chat. I'm going to break us into groups. Oh, thank you, Kiki, for some of the groups, the simple stuff there. That in with y'all later. But yeah, I'm gonna this is a shout out to Kiki for this. Google like a pro. This is how you kind of would use Google to your advantage. I'm gonna share this in our channel here. And yeah, do you have any questions before we break off in the groups and work on these? Nothing. Viewer. All right. Get in the groups, guys. All right, so we're gonna work until around 8:25. We'll come back together afterwards, and we will just close out class after that. Okay.
I think your camera froze.
That scales. All right. Well, I'm still here. I swear I'm not a robot. All right, so TAs stay in the main room. If y'all need help, come and reach out to us and we'll come and check on you in a little bit, okay? All right, see you guys. Rooms are open. Get going. All right, so this is an example of how you'd kind of like work on the lab here. Share my screen. I'm gonna go to a lab. So, yeah, speaking grandma, let's actually kind of use this over here real quick. Second. All right, so we have our speaking grandma here. Go. All right, so of course, read the README, but the first thing you're gonna do is actually go into your folder of library here, the lib folder, and inside of there is a file that basically has like the function that you're going to be writing your logic in. So for in between, there is an in between JS. For the other lab, there is an isval JS. Let me just see if I can quickly show you that, but you would be writing your logic in there. I deleted all of those, but yeah, basically inside of here, you would just write your logic of like, hey, return, like logic written here, da, 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 da. And basically afterward, you can test this out by actually running the command inside of here. So like you run your npm install, but then npm test to see if you have pass the test. The tests are currently inside of like your spec file here. So it actually checks a couple of values, but the idea is you are checking to see if your logic is working properly. So this is about capitalization. So, you kind of like would do an if conditional. It'll be like if something is capitalized, if there is caps here. Let's see if I can quickly do that. Bam. That's not how you do it. But if there are caps, this isn't valid logic, but the idea is if there's capitalization here and you're gonna return something else, turn something else. So what you're gonna, let's kind of go back to the assignment that gave you here. We go back to my GitHub here. Oh wait, it's in our Slack here. So here we go to start with the in between. So you've cloned the in between lab, right? Is that the one you're starting on?
Yeah,
Okay, great. So inside of your lib folder, you have you basically have like this empty function here. What you're gonna do
not what
in
you're
here is actually you have a number that will be passed in. You have a minimum number and a maximum number. So what you got to do is compare the minimum number and the maximum number and see if like this number that was passed in, the first one, is in between minimum and maximum. So the idea is if this was something like if you got a minimum number of 1 and a maximum number of 10 and the number that was passed in was 5, this would be considered true because it's in between. If you were given like a minimum number of 1, a maximum number of 10, but your number here was 12, it's not in between the two numbers, so you would return false. And that's basically what the logic you have to kind of write inside of your lib folder here.
Okay, I got this point. Also, one more thing. Why do we download the Node GS? What's that for? Or what we're gonna use it for?
So that actually is you're gonna run your tests and stuff like that with Node.js. Basically, Node.js is it's a library that basically helps you run like this server side kind of like JavaScript on your terminal, all the way to like particular apps, all the way to installing it for um future frameworks and stuff that you'll be working with. So you need it you need it to actually do the future labs in the class, but also you're going to need it to work with React, work with backend services, all the stuff on the web that most people need. You'll be using it for that. So it's important.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Oh, you have another question?
Yeah. Can you send me back to break room or not just stay here?
Oh, I got you. What room were you in before?
It's a good question.
Oh,
I don't remember, to be honest. But hold
Who
on,
was in your room? Who was in your room?
Anayana? I can just text her and tell her what room
Room
it is.
2.
Yeah, it's Anayana.
oh yeah. All right. I'm moving you,
Thank you.
putting you in there. why can't I put you in there? Well, actually, let me. Welcome back, everybody. I hope like the time working with your classmates was fruitful. So I know there are some questions on like the labs and stuff like that. Again, we will kind of like go over more concepts like whether you're having trouble with Node or like kind of like lost on how to do the labs in JavaScript on Saturday. But of course, feel free to ask us on Slack. Me and the TAs are going to be available. Well, not me because I'm like there. I'm basically prepping your lessons for tomorrow for Saturday. But I will the TAs are gonna be available. I will be available where I can, and we'll be able to kind of like get you through your blockers there. In the meantime, don't be late for Saturday. We're gonna have a guest from the Air Force. Kazi, what's the doctor's name again?
His name is Dr. Timothy Croker. You know what I could do is I'm supposed to speak about it tomorrow also when we do the meeting with Geraldina.
Oh,
But
perfect. Y'all are gonna see.
just in case, I'm gonna drop his full name in the chat if people want to look him up on LinkedIn or something.
Perfect. Yeah, so y'all will see each other on Friday tomorrow, but we'll see each other on Saturday. So, be ready. Hopefully it won't rain like last time. That was such a dreary first day in person, but again, go to the third floor room that we went to before. And around basically after Dr. Kruger is done with his kind of talk on the Air Force. We'll basically have the other room opened up, so we'll do like a quick lecture, then just go into more JavaScript lessons and labs. Okay. All right. So if you don't have any questions, happy Thursday. I am going to I will see y'all on Saturday. Again, I have to live the example I shared and grab some Jamaican food for dinner. So I hope y'all have eaten already. We'll have
Jamaican food's fire.
Jamaican food is fire. I agree.
so good. Yeah, honestly, it's like the only problem is they're so expensive, man. I'm just like,
Yeah, oxtail is super expensive.
no, like it is super expensive, but like them because they know they're like the best and the only shop in town. They're like, yo, curry chicken, $18. I'm like, $18?
Sheesh.
I'm in the Bronx. But anyway, talk to y'all on Saturday. And I will see y'all soon. Get out of here. It's 8:31. If y'all are fans of Reggie Fils-Aimé, he is doing a live lecture series on Twitch at the NYU Game Center. So go ahead, take a look at that. I appreciate teaching y'all so much that I actually missed meeting Red guys. So I it's okay. I'll see him one day when I make the hit game.